bringing you in-depth discussion from one of the most read group of online writers covering the Edmonton Oilers. Are you ready for Oilers Overtime? Join us as we talk news, rumors, trades, player grades, game results, and more, all featured on one of the most glorified teams in the NHL, from the great one to the next one, from the boys on the bus to the decade of darkness. This is Oilers Overtime.
Hey there, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of Oilers Overtime. My name is Jim Parsons. I'm here with hockeyraiders.com. And as usual, we've got Colton Pankiw and Brian Swane with us. Colton, how you doing?
Good. Feeling pretty good after last night.
Yeah. Brian, how about you?
Very well. Very well.
Yeah, it's hard not to be in a good mood after a game like that, right? Now, we should probably go, okay, well, they were missing Nikolai Ehlers and they were missing, a couple other pieces, Adam Lowry, but they absolutely dissected the Winnipeg Jets. It was not a pretty game for Winnipeg. And we were going to talk about the Connor McDavid 100-point race, which we tend to do every time that we do one of these shows at the end of the show. But it's really, really going to be hard not to talk about that to start things off. So I figured we'd go around and we would just, like an ode to Connor McDavid, just an appreciation thread, if you will, just about that game. 4 points, just took over. Unbelievable. There's no words to really describe what he's been doing this season and what he continues to do. Colton, I'll start with you. What do you make out of that performance from Connor McDavid last night?
Yeah, it was just complete domination, which he's really done against the Jets all year long. But it felt like every time he was on the ice, there was a scoring chance of some sort, whether it was a breakaway, odd man rush. He was just, it's like we've seen from him lots of times before, but it felt like every time the puck was on his stick, there was going to be a goal that happened.
Brian, what about you? Are you still surprised at what he can do, or are you kind of like, look, this is just par for the course with a guy like this? He amazes us, but now we're not shocked anymore.
Yeah, I'm more surprised when he doesn't do this kind of stuff now, to be honest. Like I look at when he plays a game like last night, I'm like, how did this guy go 3 games without scoring a point? It's just when you see the ability he has, it's remarkable. Especially in this era, we just don't see this anymore. We haven't seen this in a generation. And I hope everyone, and I think everybody does, really appreciate just what it is that we're witnessing here. This is not something that you're going to see very often.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing when you think that he got 3 goals. He's got a hat trick, and all 3 goals were very, very different. You've got the first one, and you almost have to watch it in slow motion just to appreciate what he's doing. The first one's kind of a tip out in midair. The second one's a fake slap shot through the wickets. And then the third one's a breakaway where he looks backwards and he sees how much time he has to actually make a play. And then he makes a crazy dangle on a move he's done a million times, but you just can't stop it. Like, it's pretty much the most amazing stuff to be what. And we're so lucky to be Oilers fans and be able to watch this on a regular basis. We talk about this every week. Brian, you did an article today about McDavid and his 100-point, and we talk about it, and we've always kind of said, oh, he'll get close, but he might not do it. I might have been the lone guy last week to think that he could do it, but has your situation changed? Has your outlook on 100 points, are you different now having watched that game last night?
Yeah, well, I've been kind of writing about this tongue-in-cheek all season long, and as I mentioned in my article, it's kind of always been like, it would be cool if he did it, wouldn't it be fun if, but it's always been like such a far-off reaching thing, and it's one thing to have that pace, score at that pace for a month or 6 weeks, but then we just keep getting closer and closer, and he's still kind of hanging around, and now this latest surge where he's got, 10 points in 3 games now? It's right there for him. It's right there for the taking, and so, yeah, for the first time all season, I legitimately think he's actually going to get there. It's not just kind of it'd be cool if he did it. Now he's going to do it.
Well, like I've said before, it's hard to bet against him. And Gretzky was just recently interviewed and talked about how he thinks he's going to get more than 100 points. Colton, where do you sit in this situation? Do you think he gets to 100? Do you still think he's going to get close? Because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, you were like he's going to get real close, but he's probably not going to do it. Gretzky said he's going to get more than 100. Brian's predicted him to get exactly 100. Like, where do you sit with Connor McDavid at this point?
Yeah, I guess how do you go against Wayne Gretzky, right? But at the same time, I don't know. I think he'll get close. Obviously, yeah, Brian thinks he'll get there. I think it'll be really close. I said before, I won't be surprised. I think it looks more likely now. My only thing is if he has one other game where he's shut out, then all of a sudden we're kind of doing this whole thing over again and questioning it. Like I said, I think he'll get close. I'm a little hesitant.
Well, I'm with you on the, hey, this conversation changes if he has a game or two where he doesn't score. And he's done that a couple times this season where he's not produced anything, which is kind of surprising for what he's done so far this season. But one of the things that I'll contend that might change the dynamic as the season rolls along here. Last night, for example, he only played 16 minutes. He got 4 points with 16 minutes worth of ice time. And specifically, that was done to get a guy like Ryan McLeod in the lineup more often. And we'll talk about him in a second. But you have to think that Dave Tippett is going to change the way he slots McDavid's ice time as he creeps closer and closer and closer to 100. Now, if you get to those last couple of games and he's at 96, 97, he's going to play the guy. Like, there's just no way that he's not going to do everything he possibly can. Now, at the expense of wins and losses or playoff, he's not going to do it, or injuries. But if he can get McDavid close to the 100, everybody wants to see it happen, right? So I think when he pulls him back last night and he doesn't play him as often as he could have, you have to keep that into consideration and go, man, he could have had 1-2 more points if he'd played 3 or 4 more minutes, because he's averaging 20, 22, 23 minutes a night, right? So he played far less than he normally would. So we have to weigh that in too. The closer he gets, I think the more and more he's probably going to get some ice time. Is that fair, Colton? Do you think that's a fair assumption on my part?
Yes and no. The only argument I would make against it, I guess, is just team success over personal accolades. So maybe the only thing would be with playoffs coming up, maybe you don't want to go too much, but at the same time, I don't think you don't have to worry about him getting tired or anything like that. We've seen before. He's just a different type of player altogether. So I do think that Tippett will do everything in his power to get him to that 100-point mark or as close as they can.
Well, and Brian, McDavid's a high performance guy, right? Like, the minute he sees a goal, he wants to not only achieve it, but he wants to just shoot right past it. So if he'll never tell you this, he's never going to say, oh, hey, I want my 100 points. He's always going to talk about his teammates first and success of the team. And Colton's 100% right. If it means team atmosphere, if it means wins and losses, Connor McDavid will take a back seat. But burning inside him is the fact that he wants to get 100 points in 56 games, no?
Yeah, well, I don't think they're necessarily mutually exclusive between team success and individual success, right? I mean, if he's scoring, that's helping the Oilers win. And I don't think that's what's really cool in the process of getting all these statistical accolades that he's gotten. He's done it within the context of team play. He's not a guy that cherry picks anything like that. So the one thing I think, I don't think Tippett is going to change anything. I don't think McDavid is going to do anything to go out of their way necessarily to get the points, but I just can't see him getting, like, if it's a game to go and he's on 97, 98, I just can't see him somehow getting to 100. Like, I can't see, he either misses by like 4 or 5 points or he gets it. I can't see him getting close and somehow not figuring out a way to get it.
Yeah. You got to know that he'll either elevate his game, the team will try to help him. Players like Leon Draisaitl will do whatever they can to get him that, like, you know what I mean? Like, it feels like the stars will have to align. You're right. He's either going to miss it by a lot or he's going to get it with ease. I don't think there's any in between there. One of the things I mentioned was that he was pulled back a little bit so that a guy like Ryan McLeod can get in there. I'd like to talk a little bit about him. Colton, did you get a chance to watch him at all? What did you think of McLeod's first game, his debut? There seems to be a lot of buzz about this guy. Like, a couple weeks ago, even a month, I didn't hear a ton about him. We knew of him. Like, he was a high-skilled, speedy forward who's playing really well in the AHL. But there seems to be this buzz around this guy that he's going to be something here. And there's a lot of talk already, and it's only been one game. But what'd you make of his debut?
The one thing I really noticed with him, especially in the first period, was just that he wasn't afraid to really just get involved. There were different puck battles in the first period. He was giving hits. He took a couple. He just really didn't seem intimidated at all or just standing around. He was getting right in on the action. So I thought the first game, I was really impressed. I wasn't really sure like what to expect from him. Kind of like you said, I don't know tons about him, but I was really impressed with what I saw.
Brian, what about you? Was this a debut enough to kind of go, hey, there's really something here with this kid, or he didn't quite show you enough to maybe stick with the team the rest of the season? Because it sounds like they didn't call him up just to keep him up for a couple games. Like, he's probably going to finish the run here.
No, I kind of come from the same perspective with Colton, where I don't watch a lot of Bakersfield at all, to be honest. So I just hadn't seen him play. I didn't know what to expect. I knew what the reputation was. I knew what people said about him. You look at the stats, and he scored a ton this year, 14 goals, 14 assists in 28 games there. So that's kind of what I was expecting. To see him put into a bottom six role, and I think really, thrive. fried might be too strong a word, but he played an effective game in a bottom six role. And when he first was called up, I'm thinking, well, is this a guy that you got to put in the top six for him to be effective or not? He's doing things that, kind of savvy little things. He's a smart player. He can make things happen. He's got good size that, seemed to be beyond his years or beyond his experience anyway. I thought he played a really responsible game. And what was he out there for? He's like 14, 15 minutes too. I mean, he put in a solid night's work.
Yeah, I mean, part of that, I think, was because of the lead. Like, you had the ability to go, okay, well, we've got a flexible lead here. We can get him in, which is a perfect scenario. Excellent coaching, awesome opportunity, which might not happen in any of these situations, but it was ideal because the first game, he gets a little confidence. He can play. There's no real worry that Winnipeg's going to make a comeback here. Hellebuyck is struggling. Like, it's just one of those games. It was all the stars aligned to make sure that he had the best possible first game he had. I was really impressed with the fact that, he used his speed. He wasn't afraid, like Colton said, to get involved in the action. He drew a penalty. He took a big hit, but he got right back up. I don't know. I mean, maybe it's too early to tell exactly what he's going to be, but he sort of fit the third line center role, right? Which is really cool because we talked last week about what would happen if he wasn't playing with skilled players, but I think he won like 3 out of 5 faceoffs. Like he had a lot of skills there, right? He's not physical, but he got involved. So it was interesting to watch that for sure. But Brian, you mentioned somebody who was responsible, and I think maybe it's a good idea to go there next. Another debut that happened on Monday was Kulikov, Dimitri Kulikov, the new arrival from New Jersey. My big takeaway was that I didn't really notice him. It's one of those things you say that about defensemen and you go, well, I didn't really see him. And then you realize he played like 18 minutes and you're like, that's probably a good thing. What did you think of Kulikov's game?
Oh, I'm very, very impressed. And this is this guy's MO. If you look at his stats over his career, I mean, never has put up any offensive numbers to speak of whatsoever. He just eats up time. He's a guy who's very consistent, never misses games. I mean, season by season, this guy plays the vast majority of his team's games. He's not been hurt often. He logs a ton of minutes, and this is what he does. He just goes out. He plays responsible. I love the potential pairing here we're seeing, and I'm sure we'll get into this, but I love seeing him alongside Larson. I thought we instantly saw something click there. I'm excited to, I was excited before saw him play after last night. I mean, this is not a guy who's going to be on the highlight reels any night, but he might keep the other team from making one on you. I mean, this is another one of the kind of pieces that a championship team has that the Oilers did not necessarily have previously, at least in a depth role.
Yeah, actually, you kind of went where I was going next for Colton, was just kind of like the idea. We talked about Kulikov, where he's going to be paired with, what it's going to look like offensive and defensive defensemen, but they went with a shutdown pair. They liked the idea of Larson and Kulikov together, and that is kind of what they got, right? It was sort of a shutdown pair. I mean, it's great when you only have one goal against in your debut, but what did you think of the idea of Larson and Kulikov together? Did you like his game? Did you notice his game all that much?
Yeah, I noticed in the first period a few times he had a couple simple but just really smart plays. And then, like you said, after that, I didn't really notice them, which for a defenseman like that is a good thing. And I like the idea of having a shutdown pairing. And I think in the playoffs, if the Edmonton's going to go on any kind of run, I think that'll be huge. I think any team relies on that. So I like those two together, and I hope that one sticks.
It's going to be very interesting to see what plays out here. Like if this is the roster that we're looking at down the stretch, it's a pretty decent roster, right? Like they dissected Winnipeg. Now they've played well against the Jets all season, but man, there's some struggling going on with the Jets. They got some injuries. They got some questions in goal. It's a team that is going the opposite direction of the Oilers, right? Like they're going down. The Oilers seem to have found their groove. They've probably been the best team in the North Division for this last month, right? Brian, I see you nodding your head here. Are the Oilers on a real roll here?
Well, you think about it right now, who's playing? The only team that's maybe the other team that's playing consistently good hockey right now is the Sens in the division, right? I mean, everyone else is having, you look at the other three most likely playoff teams being the Habs, the Jets, and the Leafs, they're all having their issues and are very up and down right now. The Oilers are by far and away playing the most consistent, good hockey of that bunch. They're probably knock on wood, probably the healthiest right now. I mean, it's, the stars seem to be aligning for something special here right now.
Well, you bring up the word health, so it's a perfect transition to the next segment here, which is the talk about Mike Smith. Now, here's a guy who just continues to wow us. He's 38, 39 years old, There's a lot of talk about what to do with him next year. Do you bring him back? Which I'm sure at most point fans are thinking, yeah, of course. Even though at the beginning of the year, there was a lot of people that didn't like the idea that the Oilers had signed him again. But there was a bit of an injury scare earlier this past weekend. Smith left practice a little bit earlier. It's like he tweaked something. Dave Tippett said, yeah, he's okay. We checked on him. He's good to go. Colton, I'll start with you. How big of a deal is it if it didn't look like there was any issues against Winnipeg, but as injury to Mike Smith, how scary is that?
Oh, when I first seen that, I was just, that would be devastating to their season. I had seen a while ago, I remember Jack Michaels had said or put out on Twitter or something that he thought Mike Smith could arguably be the Oilers MVP this year. I kind of laughed at it at the beginning, but then thinking about it more, really, I mean, outside of McDavid, maybe Nurse, he's right up there. So, I mean, losing him, I mean, you can see that Koskinen, his record's 10-11 compared to Smith's, I think 17-5-2 now. It's just been night and day. So, I mean, they're relying on him huge. And like you said, it didn't look like anything was going on last night. He was really good again. So hopefully that continues.
Well, you have the matchup. Like everybody's sort of said, yeah, Winnipeg's a pretty deep team. They've got a really good forward group. Maybe there's some questions on defense, but the argument has always been, well, they got the reigning Vezina Trophy goalie and Connor Hellebuck in net, so you can't ever rule them out. But man, head to head, Smith has been better. Like it's clear as day. Smith has outplayed Hellebuck every time these two teams get together. What do you think of that matchup, Brian? Like, is Smith just proving that you cannot discount this guy?
I'm just going to toss this out there to you guys right now. This might be a live grenade, but is he in the Vezina conversation? That's how good I think he's been. I think you actually got to consider this guy in the Vezina conversation right now.
Yeah, I don't know that he wins it because there are certainly goalies that you may want to lean towards more than him, but he's got to be at least in the conversation, right? Especially like when you're this internally focused on the Oilers and you watch how this whole relationship came together and that Ken Holland went out and he was going to get somebody else and then he came back and he signed, like this was stacked up against Mike Smith and he just proved everybody wrong. He just was like, you know what? Okay, fine. You go out, you look for what you're going to look for and then come back to me when you're ready. And he signed for $1.5 million for 1 year. And he's killed expectations. Like he's just absolutely destroyed them. So yeah, I think he's in the Vezina conversation. I don't know that he'll win it, but I think he certainly should be there, especially if the Oilers continue on this roll for the last 8-9 games. And he's going to get most of those starts, I think. What about you, Colton? What do you think?
Yeah, I don't think he's the winner, but like you said, he's right in that conversation, whether it's top 3, 4, or 5. They still have 10 games left. I mean, he won't get all of them likely, but I could think it'll come down to just how he plays to finish out the season here. Like if he continues to put up numbers like he did last night, he very well could end up making himself a finalist. I'm hesitant. I don't think he'll win it, but he's right up there for conversation.
Yeah. Tyson Barrie matched his point totals for last season. He got an assist last night. But there was Oscar Klefbom news this week. He spoke with media about his injury, his surgery, recovery time, lots of question marks. That's at least what I got from the media conference, is that he just certainly doesn't know what's going to happen. He wants to come back. He's going to play or rehab to try and come back, but there's a lot of questions here. And specifically, he was asked, would he be upset or would he be offended if the Oilers didn't protect him? We've talked about Klefbom a lot here, Brian. What do you think? Like, is Klefbom one of those guys that, man, the way things are going, you don't protect him? He's a huge question mark at this point. What do you do in his situation? Did you watch that conference? What'd you take about it?
I didn't actually see it. I did read some of the quotes or hear some of the quotes that he gave in that. So, I mean, it affirmed or confirmed to me what, the very challenging reality of the situation that the Oilers face is that you don't know. Nobody knows. And they're going to have to, whatever decision it is or approach that they take, they're going to have to base it probably on not having any certainty whatsoever what the future is. And that's going to be a tough decision to make. And, especially when this is a guy who's been just if you take the raw X and O's of a team out of it, there's the emotional part of it too, right? I mean, this is a guy who's been a great member of this team for a long time. What do they do? I don't know. That's like he says, I don't know, and that's honestly my answer to it. I mean, that's a cheap way out, but I have no idea what you do with this situation. It's a tough one, very tough one.
It is tough. And the Oilers are going to have to know something by July, like whether or not he's able to even consider playing again next season, or it looks like he's going to be good to go. If they don't have an answer by July, I almost have to assume that they're going to have to work on the negative, that he's not going to be back and make a decision. So Cole, my question for you is, with Tyson Barrie, tying his point totals the way he's played, I've always contended that I like Barrie's game. I've publicly, promoted the way he's played this season, but I've always also said you can only re-sign him at a certain dollar figure. You can't go crazy. You can't give the guy 7-8 million. It's just not going to work the way the Oilers are going to be structured and what they need to do. But does it change your opinion when you have this many question marks about Klefbom, about what you do with Tyson Barrie, the way his season has gone, the way it looks like he's probably going to want to test the free agent market? Where do you sit on his play so far?
Yeah, I mean, I was always kind of in the camp of bringing him back, and then I think this really adds to it. I can't see them protecting Klefbom at this point. I just don't think it's worth it. But yeah, no, as far as bringing Barrie back, like you said, I'd be hesitant on big dollars, as well as term too, just given I think he is 30 now. But again, if they can get a deal done around $5 million for 3 to 4 years, I say you have to do it at this point.
Last little bit on injuries here. Let's talk about a couple of guys who are out of the lineup and the physical nature of these two missing guys. We got Zach Kassian and Jujhar Khaira. Colton, I'll start with you. How big of a deal is it that Jujhar Khaira is probably a ways away from coming back? And Zach Kassian, we don't really know exactly what's happening with him. It's a lower body injury. Sounds like he's going to be out week to week. Is that a huge deal for the Oilers? Because these are two of their most physical forwards. And we just watched series against Montreal where it was very physical hockey, and you kind of need those guys. How big of a deal is it that these two are out? And do you think that's going to affect the Oilers come playoff time?
Yeah, I think it is a big deal. I think, like you said, the Montreal games really kind of emphasized, and even last night was physical too. I know the score was a little lopsided, so it didn't get as bad the last couple of periods there, but it is big. And I think if they can get back for the playoffs, that's great. But at the same time, you'd like to have them back in the season to get some games in too, just to work off some rust. And with only 10 games left, it's anyone's guess. I mean, like you said, Cassian's a big question mark. Khaira's still a question mark too. Obviously, we kind of thought he might be done for good. So yeah, hopefully you can get those guys back, because they're the kind of guys you need to win in the playoffs.
What about you, Brian? Do you see a situation? I don't know that Jujhar Khaira comes back, to be honest. He's skating with the team already, but I think he's a ways away from being medically cleared to play. Kassian, I assume, will come back, but how big of a thing is this, do you think?
Well, they haven't missed him so far, but I mean, I think it will be. I mean, I think, we talked a lot about this and just about every second show, I think, is just how big a part he's been to this team this year. And I don't know whether he will be back or not. Obviously, head injuries are the most difficult to predict, or pretty much unpredictable. So, there'll be times when the Oilers will miss him. I'd be intrigued to see who can, I don't know. I mean, after watching last night, Ryan McLeod might be a guy who can maybe do some of the things that Jujhar was doing, and help contribute to victories that way. And that's not necessarily something I would have thought of before the first time I saw McLeod last night. So we'll see. I'm a big fan of Jujhar, hoping that he gets a chance to come back and play in the playoffs, but not at the risk of his long-term health, of course.
So we started the show by, appreciating Connor McDavid, what he's done. I have two more guys that I'd like to throw a little appreciation towards. Colin, let's start with you. Let's start with Leon Draisaitl. So he beat Marcus Sturm. Beat. So highest German productive player in the NHL history. How big of a thing do you think this is? Like, I'm sure he feels wonderful about this, but I mean, we have just barely scraped the surface of what Leon Draisaitl is going to do, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. He beat that record last night, but he's going to run away with it now, obviously. This is a guy that, I mean, obviously it's still a ways to go, but could easily put up 1,000 points, I think, with the current projection he's on, playing with McDavid. He said last night about McDavid, the sky's the limit, and the same thing goes for him. I think the Oilers are just really lucky here. Oilers fans should be very happy with these two, and yeah, I don't expect him to slow down anytime soon.
Yeah, and he's developing weapons that, a season 2 ago, just, where he's just barely getting there, right? Like, his shot is unbelievable. Like, I'm thinking Ovechkin, I'm thinking Stamkos, and somewhere in that conversation is Draisaitl. Like he's got that one-timer down, he's shooting from crazy angles and he's scoring, and you never know if he's going to make it. Like he's just starting to, he's using his body, he's physical, he's getting a little bit meaner. He's just got so many attributes that are just only going to add to his game. I think it's huge. Now, the other guy I wanted to show some appreciation to, Brian, is Jesse Puljujärvi. Here's a guy who has really come into his own. I think at this point, he's established himself on that first line, not even to the point where he needs to be carried anymore. I think he's played so effectively and so well that you could put a guy like Dominic Kahuma on that line, and you don't got to worry about Puljujärvi anymore, right? Like he and McDavid have built this chemistry. He's kind of like you don't even really think about what he's going to do because his game just gets better and better and better, and he's responsible, and you don't have to worry about him. How big of a deal is that, and how good is Puljujärvi becoming?
We just talked a few minutes ago about what start of the season or before the season when we signed Smith, and you wouldn't imagine in a million years that he'd be in this position. We're talking about him as best in the conversation. When Puljujärvi came back and everyone was wondering, well, what's the second go round going to be like? Could you have imagined we'd be talking about him in this sense just after a few months? So unbelievable. I mean, when I saw that the line combination last night that they'd have Kahuna on the other wing, I thought, well, this is interesting. But I think that's right there as an absolute statement. And you touched on it. The thing that's impressed me most about his game, because let's be honest, that his offensive numbers are not at all through the roof. I mean, they're good. He's contributed, but he's not been like piling up the points this year. I think he's probably on pace for like what might be like a 40 to 50 point season over an 82 game schedule. So decent, but not the offensive player that we thought he was going to be when he was drafted so 5 years ago. But he's found his game is so well rounded now, which is what has just blown me away to come back here. Been so impressed with that. So that is my biggest takeaway, is just that this guy contributes in so many ways other than the score sheet, which is not what I necessarily would have thought or would have expected of him even just a few months ago.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. Like what I'm most excited about Puljujärvi is just what he's turning into, right? It's not so much that he's had the most miraculous season, because offensively productive wise, I mean, I wrote an article and I took a little heat for it, that he could become being the keyword, what the second best player in that group of five that was drafted in 2016. Obviously, Austin Matthews is going to be the guy, but he's becoming such an interesting player to watch that when 2-3 years down the road, who knows what the potential ceiling is for this kid. And that's what I'm so excited about, is not so much what he's done this season, and I am excited about that, but what you see in his game and what he could become next season, what he could become the season after that. You just see, it's obvious how much better he gets and more comfortable he is. I think the double hip surgery was huge for him. I think fitting in with this team is massive. There's just so much potential there, and that potential is scary good. And while you've got other guys in that draft class kind of going the other way, Puljujärvi just seems to be getting better and better and better and better. Okay, last question before we close things off. Colton, what do you think is going to happen in this next game? As people watch this, it's going to be against Winnipeg tonight. Do you see another route here? Do you see a much closer game? Because these are probably two teams that are going to play each other in the playoffs. What do you see out of the game tonight?
Yeah, I think it will be closer. I think anytime a team kind of gets embarrassed like that, especially Winnipeg's not really just they're a really good team. Like we said on this before, they might be the most underrated team in that division. So I know they've been struggling a bit lately, but I expect it to be a closer game. I still think the Oilers will come out on top. I like the matchup. I've been hoping for a while they'll get them in the playoffs, but I don't think you'll see another blowout like last night.
Do you think it's a statement game, Brian? Like if the Oilers can play Winnipeg again and have, McDavid has a big game, the goalies struggle in Winnipeg, and I don't know that they're going to rout them. I don't think that's probably going to be the case. I think Winnipeg shows up a little differently than they showed up last. But do you think it's a huge statement game for Edmonton to kind of go, you know what, we're going to be 7-2. If we beat you, you cannot beat us in a 7-game series?
Flip that around. I think it's more of a statement game for Winnipeg. They've dropped 5 in a row to the Oilers. They got it. Like we've talked about this on the other side of the coin with the Oilers against Montreal, like needing to step up and proving they can hang with them. I think Winnipeg losing 6 times in a row to a team you're going to potentially see here in the playoffs in a few weeks. I mean, so I think they're going to be coming out with that mentality. So if the Oilers, knowing, because Winnipeg, as Colton said, that they are a very good team and they're going to have a lot to play for tomorrow night. If the Oilers can face all that and come out on top, then I just think that that says an awful lot about how good this team is right now. And McDavid, 7 points.
I was just going to say, I think, Brian, you already wrote it, but how many points are you predicting for McDavid tomorrow?
The actual technical projections have him getting 3 points tomorrow night. 3 points. So there you go. Mark that down.
Colton, what about you? What do you see McDavid tomorrow or tonight?
Geez, I don't know. I'll say 2.
Yeah, I just don't know how he doesn't get at least 2 points. He knows he has to get at least 2 points, so I'm sure he's going to get 2. All right, guys, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Cole and Brian, appreciate it every week. This has been another edition of Oilers Overtime on thehockeycritters.com. Don't forget, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Check out all the other videos. The other content is fantastic. Go to thehockeycritters.com for all the articles that we're writing. And, we'll join you next week and join us next week as we talk more Oilers. We'll see where they're at just heading into the playoffs. Thanks, guys.